After 2 weeks with the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro Max, I have some thoughts around whether this is a worthy upgrade from the 13 or even the 12. So before you rush out and buy one, just wait a few minutes more, because here are 5 things to consider when looking for that very, very tempting upgrade. Now, number 1 is, of course, the screen. Right back to the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max, you have the exact same size screen with the same Super Retina XDR technology. In fact, the only differences are that you get ProMotion, which is their 120Hz display on the 13 and 14 Pro models, and an always-on display with the 14 Pro models. Now, right now, in my experience, the always-on display does eat through a chunk of battery, so it's not the best, and ProMotion is great, don't get me wrong, but I wonder if the vast majority of iPhone users out there could actually tell the difference between 120 and 60, but that's a debate for another day. The thing I did notice, however, was the 2000 nit peak brightness. I mean, that just blows the whole screen out on the 14. Now, it does clearly stand out to me when using this phone in, say, direct sunlight, that I just had no issues seeing the screen. And not just that, but the phone didn't even get warm whilst I was using it. Now, the 13 Pro is half as bright at 1000 nits, and the 12 is less again at about 800 nits. But personally speaking, and because I live in the UK, it's not that often that I look at my phone in the bright sunlight. So when it comes to display, I would only really consider upgrading if you're on the 12 Pro perhaps, as that is much less brighter, or if you just value having that always on display. But considering this phone has the exact same size screen in traditional Apple fashion, that doesn't mean that any of your accessories are actually going to work on this phone. Now, I was hoping to reuse, all of my accessories that I bought, my cases, my screen protectors, but they just don't fit. So for me, I threw on, I had to buy a new Pitaka case. This one is the one I'm using right now, is my kind of case of choice. And I had to buy yet another screen protector. Now, I have been using this matte screen protector, which I've used. It's just an Amazon one. It's very, very cheap for a while. It works really well. It stops the reflections for when you are kind of viewing things outside or with the lights, as you'll be able to see in the footage here. But with the holes for the dynamic island, which we're calling it now, it did get a lot of dust stuck in there. So actually, more recently, I've just fitted one of these Banks glass screen protectors. They're really, really nice, really handy kit to be able to install it. Really easy to install it as well without getting any kind of bumps or air bubbles in there as well. Now, I do have a couple more of these Banks screen protectors here to give away, and also some Pitaka iPhone 14 cases for the Pro and the Pro Max. So I'm doing a giveaway to newsletter subscribers. So if you want to go, link down below to subscribe to win those. Now, I am going to completely skip Dynamic Island right now, as personally, I just don't feel that you should buy one of these just for that new feature. It's just not, it's not anything special right now. So number 2 reason why you might consider upgrading, and that is the camera system, because we do have some differences here. Now, the 14 Pro does get a new 48 megapixel main camera lens, and just outright, if you take a lot of photos where you want to crop in after you've taken them, then going from 12 to 48 can make a considerable difference. But if you don't, and you typically just upload the photos you take, then sticking with the 13 Pro is probably a wise decision. There are also the new photonic engine updates beyond Apple's previous Deep Fusion, which does use some clever processing to make your photos better, coming from what is already arguably one of the best camera phones on the market. Camera phones? Camera phones. Do you remember when we called them camera phones? Now, yes, you do get autofocus on the selfie camera on the iPhone 14 over the 12 or 13, but I can't remember a time on any of video calls or any photos that I've taken where I was out of focus. So not really a huge difference for me. Now, the difference between the 12 and the 13 Pros might be worth an upgrade, since you only go from a 4x optical zoom on the 12 to a 6x on the 13 and 14, which means you can just zoom in further before you introduce any like digital pixelation into your photos and into your videos as well. Let's talk battery life now. With the iPhone 14 giving you a suggested 1 hour extra over the 13, with an exception. Now, the iPhone 14's always on display does consume additional power, and in my experience with using this phone over the last few weeks now, it can mean the difference between 1 and maybe 2 full days of battery life. So unless you're really desperate to have an always on display, then I really don't think it's worth upgrading to the 14, not just yet. The always on display is great, it's not got a huge amount to it just yet. But mentioning the 12 quickly again, the 12 gets like 10 extra hours of battery life going to the 13, so if you're on a 12, then yeah, upgrade. As for the chip, A16 Bionic. Yes, it's meant to be faster than the A15 and the A14. No, I haven't actually noticed the difference on any of the phones, to be honest. Like, I've not once thought to myself that the iPhone 13 was slow. Not once thought the iPhone 12 was slow. And whilst there is, of course, a minor spec bump if you were to benchmark these phones against each other, side by side, there is little to no noticeable differences when using this launching apps on day-to-day versus the iPhone 13 versus the 12. So the question is, who is the iPhone 14 actually for? Now, my advice, if you have an iPhone 12 and want some of those new features, then absolutely get the iPhone 14 Pro or the Pro Max. If you have the 13 though, don't upgrade to the 14 unless you feel the 2000 nit brightness or camera features really make it for you. Don't go one and find yourself FOMOing because of this, dynamic island feature. It's honestly, it's not much of a feature in my opinion, or you're always on display. But how you pay for these matters, because at the time of making this video, you can still buy the iPhone 13 Pro, series of phones at a pretty decent discount from Amazon. You can't buy from Apple, you have to go through Amazon. Buy direct from Apple though, and you can spread your payments at 0% interest. So let me know what you did in the comments, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.